I come from generations of loggers. My grandfather drove logging truck. My brother was a faller. Been involved in the forest industry since forever.
Mick, he doesn't like to be called a knowledge keeper, but gosh darn it, he is. He's been doing this work longer than most people.
My first time working in the bush was when I was 14 years old. So went from running chainsaw, planting trees, stream rehabilitation for fisheries, and just a real overall, a whole gambit of opportunities of getting different perspectives of the different resources and how to utilize the resource, protect the resources, and manage the resources. Went back to school to NVIT, got a diploma in natural resources, and after graduation, my First Nation hired me to manage their forestry operation.
The Ntityix Resources company, our forestry company for Westbank First Nation, we just want to help. We want to help our contractors, provide them with employment. We want to help industry in providing the resources that's needed to create structures, to create infrastructure.
Ntityix Resources was established in 2006 with Westbank First Nation as its sole shareholder. Over 90% of our forestry activities are contracted to Westbank First Nation members. Our contracting companies provide a full range of services, including harvesting, road construction, log hauling, professional and technical field support, and silviculture services. The total area of the Westbank block is 431 square kilometers.
Given my experience and where I had taken my career up to that point, kind of left me in a spot where I wasn't really comfortable with a lot of the work that I was doing. Where I've been working in the past as an industry forester primarily is values are often treated as constraints on the land base. We need to be a business in order to do what we want to do or need to do on the land.
To manage and take control of lands that we haven't had access to and truly manage in a way that's our values, not just from an economic perspective.
We look at it as a cycle, that the forest provides us with some revenue in which we can reinvest back into the forest to sustain that forest long term.
Within Ntityix Resources, we do have First Nations focus.
Success is healing in our community. Success is having our children on the lands, our elders on the lands, having a forest to caretake.
We're harvesting and generate more employment opportunities and more revenue for the community.
What I find is that they're having more opportunity, and that's really good in any form.
I love working outdoors. It's always been the biggest passion of mine, just to get outside.
Get our people, into the mountains and into the woods. There's guys who come one day and they say, I'm done, I can't do it. And then there's guys who you'd think that couldn't handle it, and they become natural out here.
The size, the power, just being out here, I was just blown away.
We are already producing some of our own lumber and selling some of that lumber overseas. We've sold some of that lumber in Australia, into Japan, into the United States. We have a lot of priorities within the company. Profit is one of them, but it's not the top priority. Our top priority is to manage the forest in a way in which we can make it more resilient and healthier than it is today. With Westbank and Ntityix, those values are values. They are what they are. And we manage all of those values on the land base. That makes us a little bit different, or maybe significantly different than some of the other major licensees in the province where they're not mandated to do that.
When I first started, I was working with some of the other major licensees, and it's just a different, I guess, mentality, atmosphere at times. In the past, it's been primarily focused on volume and timber and extracting that resource. So within Ntityix and working with them, we have a more holistic approach, taking into account other values.
Our Syilx principles are very, very clear. Protect our culture, recognize our culture, be stewards of the land, be responsible, ensure that we have something for our future. And I think this is evident in the way the Ntityix, our corporation, now practices and does business. And I think it's evident that it's the future.
It's a 7-generation plan that guides us. And that's a plan that we're all proud of. The premise of what we're doing is to manage for future generations. That's why it's called the 7-generation plan.
As Okanagan people, there's teachings that come from our stories, our chaptooth, that we have to understand and apply to our contemporary ways of being. Our culture goes back many thousands of years. And I know that we've always had the respect for the land. We've done our best to mirror our pedagogy as Syilx people, as Okanagan people. As Indigenous people, it's common to think forward in that way. What's going to be there for not just the next generation, but 7 generations ahead. So it's absolutely crucial to plan for 7 generations. Without it, you're looking at a tree for money. You're looking at the land as a resource as opposed to your source of life. There's values in seeing a forest for being that source of life and not that source of revenue. The 6 goals of the 7 generations plan are: Goal 1, sustain the forest as a life support system for all living things, including people. Goal 2, care for and, where possible, improve water quality and supply. Goal 3, care for and, where possible, improve specific wildlife habitat. Goal 4, conserve, protect, and improve culturally important and endangered plants and plant communities. Goal 5, ensure community benefits from the forest are reasonable, fair, and sustainable. 6, restore damaged ecosystems, improve forest health, and reduce destructive wildfire.
When you're in the forest and you're making a decision, imagine what that decision is going to look like 120 years from now. Don't look at it as a short-term decision, it's a long-term decision.
Are we leaving the land in a way that they can be proud of? Are we leaving them with enough to be able to replenish what needs to be replenished? We want to generally look after forests and the lands that the forests are on through our entire nation, which is a wonderful vision to have, but it's complex to say the least.
We have staff, they look at our riparian management areas, they look at our old forest zone, they look at wildlife tree retention areas. From what they're observing before and after harvesting, we can make better decisions going forward.
We are in what we call the Trepanier areas of Trepanier Creek coming out of Peachland. We are standing in a cut block right now. A cut block is an area that we're logging in. So the cut block is that spot we're actually harvesting in. Although some people might recognize it as that because there's trees here. It's a selection harvest. So we've thinned it out to make it look more like it should have 150 years ago. If you can see behind me here, that's exactly what that looks like. It's more open and more park-like, probably, as some people would say.
To prevent it all from either being chewed up by insects or consumed by wildfire, and reinvesting some of those dollars back into the land itself. We are trying to reinvest everything that we possibly can back into the land.
We've changed to smaller openings, more retention, more wildlife attributes protection that we do out there, more water protection, to maintain biodiversity within the stand and within the landscape.
Sustainability in the 7 Generations Plan involves water, ecosystem health, fire resilience, and obviously there's still the component of economics and benefits to the community. And so the 7 Generations Plan addresses those goals through various objectives and strategies.
One of the first goals of our 7 Generation Plan is to protect water.
We celebrate, and the Okanagan would not be the Okanagan without Okanagan Lake. At the very least, we can look at our most sacred resource and say we can at least treat that with respect. And if we can start treating the water with respect, the plants will grow, the trees will grow, the berries will grow. If the berries are growing, our people will go gather. Our people will understand that responsibility, that if they want to see a grizzly bear, they have to protect the forest.
Done some extensive soil mapping within our community forest. Soil supports everything that grows on the land, and what grows on the land supports wildlife and supports us. When we're planting huckleberries, which is an important plant species here for the community, we're trying to determine what are the best soils in which to plant huckleberries back onto the land. And this is another tool that will enable us to do that.
The topography is different from the north than it is to the south. The water availability is different. And also you have to be able to localize the work that you do to accommodate the larger Syilx principles. And so the 7 Generations Plan is basically our way to look at our area where we identify as our caretakership area and say this is how we're going to do our best to look after our lands local to the environment and ecosystems that they're in here.
In those particular ecosystems, maybe you can protect those old trees by just leaving them alone. In this area of the province where we have frequent wildfires, we can't do that. Over the last 150 years, since European settlers came into the area, the Indigenous community hasn't been able to do the burning that they've done in the past.
The McDougall Creek wildfire was the largest wildfire in the history of West Kelowna. Over 10,000 residents in the city were evacuated. More than 500 firefighters from municipalities across British Columbia and the US were battling the blaze from the ground and air for several weeks, and the wildfire was estimated to be at over 13,500 hectares in size.
What's gone on for 150 years of what I personally consider mismanagement of our resources.
We've been suppressing fires for 100 years or more. And so these stands are starting to get a little more unnatural, say, than what they should be.
So a lot of these fuels have been accumulating for 150 years because the BC Wildfire Service has been so good at putting out fire that the amount of ingress and the amount of coarse woody debris on the forest floor has increased.
So they get a lot of understory, they're getting thicker, and if you get a fire through, it's easy for it to get up in the canopy and become a really major canopy fire or crown fire.
To the point now, when we do have a fire, there are catastrophic. You can see evidence of these catastrophic fires all around us right now. So they're not a historical ground fire that used to be very frequent in this area.
When these stands were a more natural pattern, it was low intensity fires. They tended to just kill off what was underneath, maybe some of the overstory, and everything kind of stayed a little thinner.
we are doing fire mitigation around the community. So what that entails is reducing the amount of fuels that are out in the forest.
We can't go back in time, but but take on aspects the way it used to be, the way we used to manage our resources for the benefit of every community member.
In a fuel mitigation, you might think, oh, it's just about trying to prevent fire or mitigate fire. It actually creates you're trying to create a resilient ecosystem here. They're called natural disturbance types, which means there's very frequent low intensity fires. We have a pile burning behind us, obviously. What we're doing in here is fuel mitigation. So ladder fuels are smaller trees that extend into the canopy of the larger trees. If they generally have branches right to the ground, they catch fire, they take flame right up into the canopy. So we're reducing the amount of branches that are on the tree, so we could take them up to 3 meters, live and dead, and we dispose of that. So right now we're disposing of here by burning, by reducing the amount of fuel on the ground, number one, so that you don't have as intense a fire below. When you look up, the canopy, you don't have every tree touching each other continuously down the landscape. You've got gaps in the stand, which helps in a wildfire situation in keeping the fire from progressing so fast. There's places where we got a lot of small trees that we need to thin out, or just understory trees that are going to carry fire into the canopy. That's actually mistletoe. If fire gets into that, it's going to create a really intense, long flame line, take it right up into the canopies. So that's something we want to try to get off of the tree.
We have to go back to the way these forests in this dry belt were managed prior to settlers coming in, which was frequent fire that kept the amount of fuel and coarse woody debris at a manageable level, so that when we did have a fire, it wasn't a catastrophic fire like you see today. It's just a natural process.
What you're trying to create is a resilient forest that can maybe stand up to a lower intensity fire.
By managing to that plan, we're also ensuring that the future will be more, capable of adapting to future needs, changes, and hopefully continuing to provide opportunity for community members.
My family lineage is the firekeepers of the Okanagan, the grunters who get out there, who know how to start fires and who take pride in their work.
So far, what I've seen for the younger generations coming into the field, I think there's more adaptation to First Nations values that they teach at a younger age.
We're such a small little influence on our traditional territory that it's difficult to look with any optimism to say there's going to be a forest 20 years from now. It's scary. Major positions of resorts, whatever it might be, development, encroachment, species at risk. Knowing climate change is a real thing, so how do we adapt to those changes? And how do we share the knowledge so that it is consistent across the forest, across the landscape, across our entire nation? So the way that I see it moving forward, the way I'm hoping that is supported throughout the nation, is that we just look at it one piece at a time. My youngest, last week, right before I left for Vancouver, goes, I forgot who was asking her, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? She looked at me dead in the eyes and said, I want to be just like my dad. Because I am proud that she wants to be like me. Scared that she's going to have to fight the same battles. Wouldn't choose any other walk of life. This is absolutely the most difficult job I've ever had. Trying to heal community, trying to heal people that have suffered for hundreds of years, who've been beaten and taken away from their own families. Were never shown the love that they so rightfully deserved. It's hard. I want those major licensees to respect Okanagan people, the ways in which we do work, recognize their values, so that they can have a forestry company in 20 years.
We want to take Ntityix is to expand the area that we practice these forestry practices to a broader area. We'd like to incorporate more land in which we can make these decisions and manage the forest in Ntityix.
We're still providing economic success for our community, but having that major influence on forestry practices as a whole, and not just within our region here, across the province and probably across Canada as a whole, we can do that.
What motivates me to work for my community is to leave a legacy, inspire, and also take back where our rightful place is on the overall management of our resources in our community.